We have 470,000 working poor people with health care coverage today who didn't have it when I became governor. The idea to me of not doing the Medicaid expansion, I just couldn't reconcile that, especially because I am pro-life. And the pro-life ethos has to mean more than just the abortion issue. My mother was an emergency room nurse. I am most appreciative that she taught us how important it is to have an active sacramental life in the Catholic Church, especially the Eucharist. If you believe, as we are taught, that that's the body, blood, soul, and divinity of Jesus Christ, then there is nowhere else to go.
Back in 2015, John Bel Edwards faced daunting odds. As the Democratic candidate for governor of Louisiana, he was running against a prominent Republican in the reddest of red states. Donald Trump would sweep Louisiana with nearly 60% of the vote the following year. But somehow, Edwards pulled off the impossible. As his opponent faltered in the wake of personal scandal, he stood firm, steadied by values he says he learned growing up in a faithful Catholic community in the small town of Amite, Louisiana. After his election, Edwards chose a passage from the 25th chapter of the Gospel of Matthew to be read at his inaugural Mass. "Whatsoever you do to the least, you do to me." These words of Jesus have guided an ambitious agenda for Governor Edwards' administration. Dramatic Medicare expansion, groundbreaking criminal justice reform, and anti-human trafficking measures that brought him all the way to the Vatican. Edwards is a rarity in American politics these days, committed to protecting society's most vulnerable from womb to tomb. I was impressed by the way the governor has sought to live his faith in the public square. No easy task for any Catholic politician in the current political climate. And that's why we've chosen John Bel Edwards as our inaugural America Profile. This past summer, I traveled to Baton Rouge, and I spoke with the governor about his Catholic faith and how that faith is shaping his role as the 56th governor of the state of Louisiana. Governor, thank you very much for being with us.
You're welcome. It's my pleasure.
So I wonder if we could begin by your talking a little bit about growing up in Amite in a family with 8 kids and how your faith came to you.
Well, my mother and father were tremendous examples of faith, and they raised us in St. Lena Catholic Church in Amite, Louisiana, and we would go to church, and my family with my mom and dad and 8 kids, we took up the whole pew, and she, my mother, was an emergency room nurse at a charity hospital, but she was also the 6th grade catechism teacher. And she was pretty tough on us. And so we knew we had to study. And of course, she would get reports from the other teachers if we showed up unprepared. But the Catholic faith has been central to our family just as long as I can remember. And I guess I am most appreciative that she taught us how important it is to have an active sacramental life in the Catholic Church, especially the Eucharist. Because if you believe, as we are taught, that that's the body, blood, soul, and divinity of Jesus Christ, then there is nowhere else to go, but the Catholic Church. And so it's incredibly important to me to make sure that my wife and I modeled that for our children.
What was it in your faith that motivated you to want to be in service, but first in the Army and then in public life? Everything
that I experienced growing up in Amite as a Catholic just pushed me towards service. I read several books about Catholic chaplains, for example, including a Medal of Honor winner in Vietnam. And I didn't want to be a chaplain. I didn't want to be a priest, but I did want to be an Army officer. And of course, my grandmother, who, God bless her, she lived to be 102. But she pushed for me to be a priest, and I just couldn't go down that road. Personally, I'm so glad that many people do.
Is this a great state or what? Look, we heard a prayer a while ago from my pastor, but we're supposed to glorify God in all that we do. So I will say right now, to God be the glory.
On election night, in your victory speech, the first thing you did was you said, I want to give glory to God. Why was that so important to you?
Well, if you had been around for the 2 previous years, you would know. I was not the favorite to win that race, and I was blessed with a loving, supportive wife and family, and so many volunteers, and the people of the state really embraced me in the message, and how we were able to move from being a candidate with no shot to the winner by 12 points on election night. I mean, I did that, and it was heartfelt because I've now been given the opportunity to be the governor of a state with about 4.5 million people, a state that's very challenged in terms of poverty, educational outcomes, health care related outcomes, but also a beautiful state with wonderful people, really decent, good, generous people. And I really appreciate being able to serve, and I know that it would not have been possible but for God. It's one of the reasons why I took very seriously the inaugural Mass, and I was able to select, sort of like a funeral, but I don't think they listen to the dead person or what they do. But I was able to pick out all of the readings and the gospel and the songs that were sung, and had the Archbishop from New Orleans come up and lead the Mass, and that was pretty special for me as well.
What was the gospel passage that you chose?
Matthew 25. Doing for the least among us. And in fact, the Bible stays open to Matthew 25, just to remind me.
That has a particular resonance with you?
It does, because in Louisiana, we have more than our fair share of poor people, the least among us. And they are the ones who lack the ability to have lobbyists come to the state capitol.
That's obviously a very important priority for you. Also, criminal justice reform, and you've also been a champion of the pro-life cause here in Louisiana.
And all three of those things have been embraced and pushed by the faith-based community, but particularly the Catholic Church. The Medicaid expansion is a part of that. We have 470,000 working poor people with health care coverage today who didn't have it when I became governor. And I fundamentally believe that government has a role to play in improving people's lives. And you can't do everything for everybody, both because it's inappropriate and you'll never pay for it. But the Medicaid expansion was open to Louisiana. My predecessor chose not to do it. But as I mentioned before, we have way more than our fair share of poor. The health outcomes have been below average for generations. And we had one of the highest uninsured rates in the country. And so the idea to me of not doing the Medicaid expansion, I just couldn't reconcile that, especially because I am pro-life. And the pro-life ethos has to mean more than just the abortion issue. And it's fundamental. I understand how important it is, but it's got to go beyond that. The job isn't over when the baby's born if you've got poor people who need access to health care. And I actually think Governor Kasich said it very well. I don't believe that St. Peter is going to ask me whether I kept government small or big, but I expect he might ask me what I did with respect to providing health care to people when I was able to do it. And so I think that has been embraced by the people of Louisiana, by the way. It hasn't been as controversial as some people might think. Criminal justice reform, for 40 years, Louisiana took the approach that we were just going to put more people in prison, keep them there longer, and pay whatever it cost. Well, we couldn't afford it, and we were not safer as a result, and we had the nation's highest incarceration rate. We were doing precious little to prepare people to re-enter society successfully, even though 95% of the people in prison are going to get out. And so we looked at what other Southern conservative states had done. We modeled after their best practices, and we signed 10 bills into law a little over a year ago. And since then, I'm very pleased to say Louisiana no longer has the highest incarceration rate. We were able to save $12 million last fiscal year alone, and we're going to reinvest $8 million of that into making sure that people are successful upon reentry. What we know is that for someone getting out of prison, often success is defined in the first 3 days. Are they comfortable that they're going to be able to get a job? Are they going to have access to nutrition, housing? Healthcare, those sorts of things. And by the way, the Medicaid expansion plays into this because everyone getting out of prison is eligible for Medicaid. And so you kind of check that box as well. So the reform of our criminal justice system has been incredibly important for our state. And it took a lot of courage on behalf of the legislature, though, because no politician in Louisiana had ever been punished for being tough on crime. But this was a departure from that and trying to be smart and compassionate. But I will tell you that the Catholic bishops here in Louisiana spoke with a powerful voice on that, and as they have on all the issues that we've talked about, Medicaid expansion. Another thing that we're really focused on here in Louisiana, and in many ways we're well ahead of the rest of the nation, is on human trafficking. In fact, we have invested in a home for teenage female victims of human trafficking. And it's one of the things that I was able to go to Rome and visit with the Pope. He blessed our efforts, and we've actually got that home up and running now. And I'm pleased to say that they're having tremendous results out there, reaching young people who have just been put into a terrible predicament.
When we're talking about the range of pro-life concerns, I know Mrs. Edwards also spoke during the campaign about your own experience with the question of abortion. So it was a bit personal for you, not just a public policy.
Well, it is, and it was something that we had to tackle early in fact, we'd just been married a couple of years. We were living in Hawaii. I was there as an Army officer. And our first child, we knew, I think she was just shy of 20 weeks pregnant, that Samantha had spina bifida. And didn't know how profoundly she would be impacted, but Donna's doctor, her OBGYN, actually took Donna and myself to a clinic at the hospital there in Honolulu and just showed us various kids and said, now it could be as mild as this kid who had braces on the legs and as serious as this one over here. We prayed about that, but to have that abortion was never an option for us. We know it was the right decision to make, and today Samantha's doing very well. And she's married, and she's a counselor here in the East Baton Rouge school system, and very, very happy, and brings her husband and me and Donna an awful lot of joy. But I hate to say we were blessed with that decision, because had she been more profoundly impacted, I would still want to believe that we had been blessed too. But it was just one of those hard things that we went
Must
through.
have been terrifying.
Well, it was, because then you spend the rest of that pregnancy wondering how bad is it going to be, and you see little children taking their first steps, and you don't know whether your daughter's ever going to take steps like that. And so it was terrifying, but I will tell you, it brought Donna and me together, and really, I think, strengthened our Catholic Christian faith. And by the way, she is a convert. She converted to Catholicism in college.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah, she went to Southern Mississippi, where there aren't many Catholics, and decided to be Catholic.
Right.
in Hattiesburg, Mississippi.
Oh, yeah.
Which is great. I'm really happy that she did that. But Donna did tell that story because we found that, because I'm a Democrat, there were certain people around the state who were openly questioning whether I was. It didn't matter that I had an 8-year voting record in the legislature.
Right.
That was very solid on the issue. They were questioning that, and it was actually our daughter who saw that was happening. She says, "Well, why don't y'all go tell them about me?" So we made absolutely sure that Samantha was going to be okay with that, and then Donna made a commercial that I think was really helpful in terms of the campaign and making sure people understood that this wasn't a position I had come to when I decided I wanted to run for governor, and that it was sincere.
I was 20 weeks pregnant with our first child when the doctor discovered she had spina bifida and encouraged me to have an abortion. I was devastated, but John Bel never flinched. He just said, no, we're gonna love this baby no matter what. And at that moment, I watched the boy I fell in love with become the man I'm still in love with today. Samantha is getting married next spring, and she's living proof that John Bel Edwards lives his values every day.
You know, I think it really helped us to introduce ourselves to the people of Louisiana in a way that would allow them to embrace us, and that's in fact what they did. But we're very comfortable, Donna and myself, about where we are on this issue. And as I said before, the pro-life position has to extend beyond abortion. It just has to, and or at least for us, it does. I don't mean to question other people's commitment to pro-life if they don't, but for us, it just has to extend beyond that. And that's why I don't like being pigeonholed. There are people who say, well, you're pro-life on abortion, so that makes you conservative, but you're for the Medicaid expansion, that makes you liberal. But, you know, it's the exact same Catholic kiss from face, at least as I understand it, that pushes me into both of those positions. And so I don't like the labels because I don't think that they're accurate.
What was it like to meet Pope Francis?
It was better than anything that I had imagined it could be. That private audience doesn't last long, but in that couple of minutes, as a lifelong Catholic, I will tell you that was very impressive to me and to my wife Donna, because we were both able to do that and get his blessing on a plaque that went on the home that we built for these teenage victims of human trafficking, and to have him bless our efforts, and then come over after the private audience and meet with a larger group that we had brought over from Louisiana and spend a few minutes with us was really, really special. And I will never forget, because you don't think this is necessary, but we were asking him to bless our efforts and pray for us, and he asked us to pray for him. And, you know, if there's one person in the world that I would think wouldn't necessarily need my prayers because he would already be in good standing, it would be the Pope. But after he said that and I got to thinking about it, I have to imagine that he does feel the need for prayers from people all over the world, so that he will have the strength to get up and do every day what he has to do. Because I know what the weight on my shoulders is like being the governor for 4.5 million people. I can only imagine the weight that he feels every single day as a leader of the Catholics all across the globe, but being a religious leader on the world stage, period, because his voice matters whether you're Catholic or you're not.
Amen. Governor, thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you so much.
Hey, I'm Zach Davis from America Media. Did you like that last video? I thought you might have since you watched to the end. You should hit the subscribe button to your right to get more great content from America Media. That'll make sure you don't miss a thing. So hit subscribe. I'll see you there.